Good evening, everyone. Tonight we're going to be talking about a study that someone at church had asked me for. I'm not going to name names, but she wanted to discuss the job specifically for women in the Bible. And, there's a lot of the Bible, a lot of it is black and white. And so, if it says it there in the print, you know that you've got to do that. But there's so many gray areas that it doesn't specifically call for. And unfortunately, I think for the women, we can't be the preachers. We can't be the elders. There's a lot that we can't do. So we struggle trying to figure out what our place is. And so tonight, I want to start out and say first, we should be, above all, imitators of God. Ephesians, let's go there. Ephesians 5, verses 1 and 2 says, "Therefore, be imitators of God as dear children, and walk in love, as Christ has also loved us and given himself for us, an offering and a sacrifice to God for a sweet-smelling aroma." So that's number one, I think, that we should do is to, as much as possible, imitate and be like God. So how do we do that? So just some examples of things that God did. He fed the hungry in John. Let's see, it was John 6, verses 1 through 15. That was when I'm going to take these off. The multitude was following him, and he knew they were hungry, and he knew he was going to have to feed them. And so that's with the bread and the 2 fish story. So another thing he did in Matthew 8, verses 1 and 3, he helped the sick. So he healed lepers, and he healed the centurion servant in that, and Peter's mother-in-law, and he healed many more. Now, we don't have healing powers, but what women can do is we can visit the sick. We can call and see if we could drop off some groceries. If they need anything, we can send a card to lift spirits. There's things that we can do for that, and back to my first point on feeding the hungry. Come on, ladies. We surely know how to cook. And even if we don't know how to cook, we know how to go pick something up and set it out on the table. And you can even slip it over into another dish and make them think you fixed it. But regardless, we can always feed somebody. So back to, the sick, I know not many of us have time to go visit in the hospital, but I think, or nursing homes or assisted living. When I went last week or the week before, I forget, to the assisted living home, they just wanted company. And I really enjoyed talking to them. And I think if you took that time, like I said, go play a game of cards or just, sit in there and listen to them interact. It can be comical and you can have a good time. Another thing that they did was share in people's joy and in their pain. And, like Jesus did, in the joy, he was at the wedding. He was there to celebrate the wedding with them there in Matthew, where he turned the water to the wine. We're also supposed to have a habit of assembling together. So I know Hebrews, y'all know Hebrews says, don't forsake the assembly. We're also supposed to seek and save the lost. So in Matthew, the 28th chapter, it's the end of Matthew, the very last chapter, we're supposed to go into all the world. That's not just for men, that is for everyone. That applies to us women. All right, so secondly, so that was like how we be like Christ. That was my first point. The second point is, and this is not a favorite of anybody's, but we are to be submissive to our husbands. My voice kind of cracked saying that. It was hard to choke out. Just kidding. So, what does that mean? So in Ephesians and Colossians and in Peter, it all talks about obeying your husband and being submissive. God created us in Genesis. He said that it was not good for Adam to be alone and that he needed a helpmate. So first off, that is our job, is to be a helpmate. So we should have a supportive partnership. And what is, Proverbs, the proverbial woman, but Proverbs 12:4 says, an excellent wife is the crown of her husband, but she who causes him shame is like rottenness to his bones. So I want to just touch on a few rotten marital behaviors. So, my husband turned down TV so he can hear this one. So chronic criticism is one way to bring rottenness to his bones. Making fun of him, especially in public. I mean, there's one thing to have a joke in your house, but, don't embarrass him in public. Comparing him to other men is another way that is bad for your marriage and not what is intended as a proverbial woman. Disrespecting him publicly. Belittling him in front of the kids. Now, that's a big one, guys. And I struggled when the kids were little and it was time to correct. I automatically jumped on their side, not his. I was on their side and I backed them up. And, now looking back, I'd love to do it over because I should have been on his side. And we should have stood together and corrected the kids. And so please learn from my mistakes and stand a united front on that. And if you disagree, do it in private. Don't do it in front of the kids so that they know. Let's see, another way to make rottenness to your husband's bones is, how about always lecturing and nagging? I don't do that, do I, hun? Shaming him for not being spiritual enough. Now, I could see that being an issue. Like if he's not going to church, and I can see, a lot of that, oh, are you backsliding? You're not, your faith's weak. I could see that, and I could see where that would be very negative and definitely not encouraging for your husband. Also, how about controlling or manipulating with tears? I know women can. I can't cry, look, but not even if I want to, I can't cry. But, some people will cry and manipulate to get their way. And the last one I'm going to say about the wife is withholding sex. Don't do it, guys. That's not a bargaining chip that you should use. And I'm not saying it should be something that you do enjoy together, but don't withhold it as a punishment. That is just not right, and it's not godly. So it's not a proverbial woman behavior. So now back to the question of what can we do as women. So another job of ours would be building of the home. So it's not just having a career. If you are able to stay at home with your children, then I encourage you to do so. I wish I could have been home and taught my kids more and sheltered them from the world more. But, I feel like it's way worse now than what it was 20 years ago when ours were in school. So definitely consider that as your job. If you can afford to, that should be your job, I think. And, so another thing about your home is you should use it for hospitality. So when's the last time you've offered, like, for your preacher to come over for dinner, or anybody from church, have a Bible study in house? Your house should be open to, especially the church members, but even to people you're trying to win, that you would like to have you don't want to have these arguments at work or in a public store, not arguments, but discussions about religious beliefs. You don't want to sit and try to convince or convict anybody publicly. So in your home would be the place to do that. Let me look here. So, okay, Lydia in Acts, she opened her house to Paul and all of his traveling companions. So when they traveled around, they would stay at Lydia's house, and then it was kind of like like the church right there. Then let's see, how about spiritual mothering? That's another job we can do. Romans, I think it's 16:13. It says, greet Rufus, chosen in the Lord, also his mother, who has been a spiritual mother to me as well. Now that's Peter talking. So yeah, I'm mother to death. Like, our preacher is like another son to me. There's Blake. Blake is he's going to the Sunshine School of Evangelism. So when he is here in school, it's like, if you need your laundry done, let me, I've offered to help. We try to teach with him and have him over for studies, and he's like another son. And then, I've adopted Ashley and her kids into our family. So mothering is a natural instinct for us women, and God gave that to us for a reason. So let's use it. Even, if it's not a natural child, let's use it in the spiritual realm. There's plenty of people that need some mothering advice. So the other thing that we are called to do, a job is, it's not really a job, it's called work. We are called to work. We are to get your hands dirty. There's always a job. There's always bulletins that need made. There's communion trays that need prepped or washed. Kitchen cupboards that could be cleaned. There's all kinds of things in your church that can be done, let alone in your house. So there really shouldn't be any need to say there's nothing to do. There's always something that can be done. And you know what? If yours is spotless, come on over to mine or to, someone else's house and help them out. But there's always work that can be done. So Priscilla and Aquila. Now, Priscilla, she taught alongside her husband. So her husband, of course, was the teacher, but she can surely assist. And don't think I wouldn't. I would definitely be in on that discussion. And that's the example, though. That shows us that we're allowed. Women are definitely allowed to meet and carry on Bible studies and assist in, trying to win a couple or someone to the Lord. Phoebe in Romans 9, she was a servant, and she carried letters back and forth for Paul to Rome. So, there's, like I said, there's flyers that could be mailed out for revivals. Ask your preacher, he will give you some jobs, but there's always something. Junia, she was mentioned, says outstanding among the apostles. So she wasn't an apostle, but she was listed with them. And I like to think of her as me in church. In our Wednesday night Bible study, you count on me. I'm always going to speak up. I'm always going to be the one to ask the questions. I am going to be the one to help conversation along. So that's Junia here in Romans, and she was considered a missionary, and she helped them, and she also went to prison with Paul for her beliefs. So she was pretty strong on the word. Chloe was in 1 Corinthians 1:11. She carried important news to Paul. So there was Tryphenia and Persis. They were just mentioned that they work hard in the Lord. And then another one I have here is Euodia, Euodia, in Philippians. She was a contender for the faith, fought side by side with Paul. Excuse me, just a second. I gotta get a drink. Look at y'all see my mug? Isn't that cute? Lord have mercy. Anyway, so what can we, another job that we have. I've dug into this. I found all kinds of things, so I get a little bit talkative here, but we've kind of covered leaders and teachers and servants, but how do we teach? Well, Titus 2, verses 3 through 5 says, that they can urge the younger women to love their husbands and children, to be self-controlled and pure, to be busy in the home, to be kind, to be subject to their husbands, so that no one will malign the word of God. So not only are we supposed to be subjective to our husbands, but we're really supposed to help teach and urge the younger women who's just getting married to learn how to be submissive and to learn how to take care of the home. How about being a leader? You know, that's not for everyone. I'm kind of outspoken, so it doesn't bother me. I'll take charge. But one thing about a leader is when someone leads, that means someone's following. And so there will always be someone following if you lead. And so I encourage you to stand up and do that. But Deborah, in the book of Judges in chapter 4, she was the only female judge. She was a leader. And when they were going to go after try to assist or rescue and help the Israelites get away from the Canaanites. I forget the guy that said, you know, he was trying to urge her to go, and she was telling him he should, and he said, only if you do. So the guy was actually hiding behind her, and she led him there, and she knew, because she was also a prophetess, that she was going to, she knew who was going to make this all happen, and that it was a woman. And so she says, and the thing about Deborah is, though, she always prayed about what she did, and she always gave God the glory, and the victory, you know, was his. So she had her head on right and her priorities straight. But she, like I said, was basically had this premonition of who was going to be the one to save the people. And it was a lady named Jael, Jael. And she was the one that was going to kill the leader of the Canaanites. And she coerced him into her tent, and he lay down to go to sleep. And so she looks around, you know, and she didn't have anything. She didn't have any tools really to do any harm to him. So she took the peg out of the tent, and she ran that through his head, and it killed him. So she's resourceful. And so that's another job that us women, you know, we have to be resourceful. We have to look for ways to get things done and find, you know, she didn't have a knife or a sword or, you know, anything, but she still found a way to do God's purpose. And I think as long as we have God's purpose the first and foremost thought of our day, then we will do whatever means that we need to do to get his will done. So be a leader, be a teacher, be resourceful. And lastly, we are to be fearless. And Abigail, in 1 Peter 3, Abigail was married to a mean guy. He was not a good husband. He wasn't good to anybody. But he was so King David was around in that area, and he had like 200 some people in his tribe that was hungry and thirsty. And I think he sent some of the guys over to ask, Nabal was Abigail's husband, because he was rich, and he asked him for some food and drink, and he was like, why should I give you guys what I've earned? And he sent him away empty-handed. So that made David mad, and David was going to all of them was going to go in there and sneak in and kill them all at nighttime. Well, so she didn't exactly obey her husband, but Abigail knew that she had to prevent them from, you know, going in there and killing her husband. So she had snuck out of her house, you know, enough food to feed the 200 in that army. She took like 200 loaves of bread and I forget, like a cow or something like that, and just a lot of jugs of water and just plenty of rations. And I don't know how she snuck that out without him even realizing it, but she did. and which is part of God's plan. So, you know, if you have the will, he'll make the way. But because of that, David, you know, she begged for her husband's life, and he had pity on her. And he said, because, you know, well, I was going to go in there and kill every one of you. And because of what you've done, then I will not. I'll forgive you, and I'll let them live. So there is the fearless. So just a quick recap. The jobs that we have as a woman in the church is to be imitators of God. You know, and by being an imitator, it means we can feed the hungry. We can help the sick by, you know, getting groceries or dropping off a meal. We are to share in others' pain and in their joy. We are to seek and save the lost. We are to, I skipped love thy neighbor and your brothers in Christ. So, you know, that's Matthew 22:39. Then we're to be submissive to our husbands and be good builders and keepers of our home and show hospitality, provide lodging if needed to, you know, other Christians traveling, or to be of assistance to the people of the church who might need letters mailed or flyers made, or, you know, lessons for the preschool class, whatever we can do there. And then also to be a leader, to be resourceful, and to be fearless. And that's a lot of all the jobs that I could come up with. And not all of that's black and white. That took a lot of digging to find women who were made known for what they did do. But anyway, I hope that I kind of inspired you to be a hard worker in the church and to keep doing what you're doing. And to the lady that asked this question, I think you are the strongest lady working in the church. And if there's a job to do that you haven't done, I don't know about it. So I think you're good. Just keep it up. And thanks for encouraging me and a lot of others. So I guess until next week, guys, have a good week. See ya. Bye.